everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology. Today, we are delighted to introduce Nathan Naicker. Nathan is an esteemed astrologer, lecturer, and proficient in both Western and Vedic traditions. So thank you so much, Nathan, for joining us today, and how are you doing?
Thanks, very happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for coming on the show. So today's topic is going to be a sensitive topic, because we're going to be talking about mental health and the relationship with astrology. And you'll also be teaching a 5-week course on June 18th on this very topic. So for any of our audience out there who might be interested in taking the class, can you just explain more about what's going to be happening in that course?
All right. So the course starts off basically from a traditional perspective as to not getting too much bogged down into the elaborate, journeys and explorations of the psyche in the traditional material, but just kind of summarizing the main points from that and presenting that basic technique. But we're going deeper from that traditional starting point as to, well, why did they figure this out? Why are they starting here with mental health? And then we expanding upon those concepts in bringing in things from modern perspectives, as well as my own research and practice that seems to tie things together and wrap things up nicely. So it's just leading the student step by step in building a mental health profile analysis of the chart.
Fantastic.
So that we can be more sure about what we say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's such an important topic to discuss. And as I was telling you before the recording started, it's not a topic I've seen addressed comprehensively in the astrological community. So I think this is a very important topic to discuss. So thank you very much. And do you have any chart examples you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, I do. I thought I would maybe just, I guess maybe before I share my screen, just maybe say a couple of things before I jump into the charts so that people are kind of with me. What I've done with the medical astrology is also bring back the theory of miasma as a medical component of analysis. And of course, with the mental health, we're talking about miasma that is internalized. And there's two ways this happens. And traditionally, we talk about the moon and Mercury. And we're talking about the moon as pertaining to how are we residing within ourselves, the sense of comfort in our own skin, which is an important aspect of mental health from a stability of the individual point of view, okay? And we're also talking about Mercury, which is to do with more the social, the environmental, the impact from the outside, and our social engagements, interactions with people, and matters of life. And so traditionally, they focus on these two planets. But what I've also found is that there are signs that are important for mental health, or actually they are more sensitive to mental health. They are more sensitive to the inner workings of things. I know if people are practicing, a more psychological form of astrology, everything in the chart becomes psychological, or can be. And that may be true because everything has an internal and external component in life. But what I found is that, well, we then very quickly get to a point where how do we make the distinction between, is this really a mental health issue, or is it a challenging issue in life? Because there are many cases where people have off days, down days, depressive, swings, but it doesn't result in something major as a shutdown or as a problem of identity or engagement with people. I'm talking about serious mental health issues here. Hospitalization, institutionalization cases, and other aberrations of the mind or the psychology of a person. I'm not a psychological expert by any means. I'm not trained psychologically. So I do have to put that in there. It's just from my practice and study over the years what I picked up. So I also find that, let us actually go into some of those charts.
And so from a traditional perspective, you're looking at traditional rulers, the conditions of the planets, and also when you're bringing in sides, you're looking at element mode and polarity and those kind of aspects within that?
Yes, so, people even can talk about declination from a psychological point of view as well, because latitude, longitude, declination, these are different kinds of strength evaluations as well. So if you really want to get down to it, it's a never-ending game. So what I've done is to make it more accessible for people to begin with is to look at the big picture. Because actually what we find, or what I found is that, and I'm using whole signs as the houses specifically when I'm analyzing a chart for mental health, because I found in my practice over the years that the whole signs as a house really shows the subjective perspective on those affairs. They do not really show the external manifestation as fully. So if I want to see what is the subjective view of life and those areas of life, I'm going to use the whole signs as houses. The separating aspects are a lot more important from a mental health perspective than the applying aspects. And you think, well, how does that work? But that's what the course is for, So there's these little things that we take for granted when we look at a chart. But what I'm doing is asking the question, why and when is it relevant? And what is the context for looking at things? So the same chart, I may look at in a very different context for normal, mundane matters, career, job, money. But if I want to see the psychological components of that, the impact on mental health, it's a different set of techniques completely. So the signs that are naturally the 9th house, the 8th house, the 11th house, the 12th house, and those signs as well, which are Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Pisces. These, the 2 signs of Jupiter, the 2 natural houses of Jupiter, and I know that's not a traditional thing, but it works that way if you know what you're doing, as well as the nocturnal sign of Mars, Scorpio, and the solar sign of Saturn, which is Aquarius. These 4 signs in particular, and the corresponding houses, really show what can become acutely mental health problem, sensitivity. So that is, one way of looking at it. So if I don't know how much you want me to explain of the theory here. So if you want me to explain more, just let me know. But if we look at this chart for Stefano Savorani, now in the course, I teach people for each rising sign, what are the sensitive houses, because it changes. So what people are going to be learning is, given the rising sign of the chart, what are the sensitive houses from a mental health point of view? And the sensitive signs are those 4 in general. So here we can see that, well, this is Capricorn rising. So obviously Scorpio as the 8th sign of the natural zodiac, but also on the 11th house of the chart. Right? That is a sensitive point, sensitive sign. But thankfully, there's nothing here so much. It is empty. So I keep that in mind. Then I will see the next sign was Sagittarius. You know what I'm doing here, right? Scorpio, 8th house. Sagittarius, 9th house. Aquarius, 11th house. And Pisces, 12th house, right? If there are any combinations of these, like if Scorpio is the 9th house, or Aquarius is the 8th house, or Pisces is the 11th house, I'm going to pay attention to that. That's one of the things people are going to be learning, and how that works. So here you're seeing that, okay, well, we must first check, the moon and Mercury, as well as the 4th house and the 7th house, respectively. And I see, well, the moon here is in Pisces, which is one of the mentally sensitive signs. It's in the 3rd house. It is ruling the 7th house. So there's a component here of sensitivity in our social interactions that this person has that can be quite emotionally driven, emotionally sensitive, and open to influence. That's something first I can say. Secondly, in the 4th house, I find Mercury, and that's in Aries, and it has a separating aspect from Jupiter, who is the ruler of that moon. And it's also in a sensitive sign of Aquarius. So there's a lot happening here with the third house ruler, the moon in the third house, and these connections that are very strong. I do also notice that Sagittarius is empty, but there is an outer planet here, and I do take that into account from a mental health point of view. And so this gives me a lot more, both the rulers of Scorpio and Sagittarius are sitting in the mental sign of Aquarius. And one of them is also the ruler of the moon that is sensitive, is Jupiter. So I can say here that there's a strong third house theme that has come up. Third house theme that has come up here for this person. Now, this person is a police officer, and you can sort of see that the ascendant ruler in the sixth house. But I'm not really bothered about that. Okay, this is public service, civil service, public service, sixth house. Okay, in a good condition. Okay, on a good day. So I'm not too bothered about that. That's just showing me the primary motivation where the person is applying themselves in their intelligence. And we all have.
How about the chart ruler's relationship with Mercury? Because they've got an interesting mixed reception there. Do you take that in consideration as well?
So you mean this between?
So Saturn in Gemini. So the mixed reception, obviously, Saturn's finding its fall in Aries, but we've got the home side of Mercury. Is that you build on the delineation? Would you take that into consideration?
In the matter of the use of their application of their intelligence, yes.
Okay.
In the distinction has to be made between mental health and application of intelligence. So when I say application of intelligence, I'm following the ascendant as the point where the earth and the sky meet. Okay, as what are we doing with ourselves here in terms of problem solving, in terms of decision making. So following the rule of the ascendant and whatever the rule of the ascendant has to deal with is going to show me how they are tackling problems on a day-to-day basis. What is their preferential bias, those kind of things. But is it a mental health issue? That's a separate topic. They are distinct. They are distinct. So taking decisions, and because taking decisions don't always have an impact on mental health. The issue is that if there's a problem with mental health, people stop wanting to make decisions effectively. In other words, there's something else happening beyond the ascendant, behind the ascendant, deeper at the level of the ascendant, which is the rational mind, the temple of Mercury. There's something deeper than that. If we're not comfortable with that, then the rational processes don't know what to do.
Right. Fascinating. And you also mentioned Pisces being particularly sensitive. Can you explain to our viewers why that you feel is that the case?
Yes. So this will be explained more in the workshop, of course, but the sign of Pisces being the natural 12th house of the zodiac, which has other implications to it, but there's a sense of if there are afflictions or sensitivities in the sign of Pisces, a person struggles to let go. A person struggles with loss. They struggle with missed opportunities and regrets. And that's what I find consistently with the sign of Pisces. It's not just the soft application of the will. The lack of definition that comes from that sign from a psychological point of view means that when there are sensitive things in the sign of Pisces, boundaries, if Aquarius and the 11th house is you getting involved socially, publicly, sometimes that can become limiting from a mental health point of view, as we all are aware of with social media, okay? Becomes actually oppressive on the individual because it's opposing the sign of Leo. It becomes oppressive on the individual. The sign of Pisces, in a positive sense, is, it's spiritual and you're opening up and you're dissolving the boundaries between things. That's fine if you're being spiritual. But for every normal day, average person out there, sensitivities and afflictions in the sign of Pisces bring about events where you're not sure who you are, what you're doing. The distinction between you and the other person is now not there. So instead of you getting involved actively with the world, which is what Aquarius and 11th house can be showing, Pisces is where the world is sitting on your head. The world is now, it's being absorbed and there's no filters. So you can be pushed, you can feel moved to something, but grief and sorrow and mental acute problems in Pisces can be felt very keenly, and they are usually always long lasting. The case I'll show you in the next chart, this person has had, since the issue of Pisces has been triggered in their life, they have suffered from lifelong depression with the issue. They have not let it go. Because you're always looking back at, what has been taken away, the waters have dissolved it away. It's like a good thing that has gone wrong.
And you make such an eloquent description about those sensitivities as well. So sharing my own example and tying in with mental health, my Mercury is in detriment and fall in the 6th, ruling the 12th. I did have a bit of time at the age of 16 in a mental health facility. So I, from what you're saying now, I can definitely, it hits home with me what you're talking about, and then tying in the mental health. And of course, as I started learning astrology, I look back at certain dates using perfections, progressions, transits, just to hone in on that particular time in my life. And it was that, I think that's the power of astrology. I know it was in hindsight and looking back, but the power of astrology to look back and to see where were these moments in time that was mental health difficulties that came about. So what you're speaking to actually hits home for me, and I think it's an excellent description. I think the whole topic is very important too.
Yes, I teach my students that planets in detriment and fall are also very powerful. Because they are. Otherwise, how are you here?
Yeah.
if what you truly believe that, oh my God, is detriment and fall, then how are you functioning? The way people talk about things, we need to be very careful. So I understand that the Pisces, and this goes back to the medical astrology,
sure.
Where dignity and ability are both strong. It's just that a planet that, it's like saying having a sun in Leo. You find people with sun in Leo get heart attacks, things like that. So what is our strength is also our vulnerability. Because if we rely on it too much as a crutch, and ignore everything else, at some point it's going to give up. And it can give up quite fantastically. So I've seen that with dignified planets. And with debility planets or detriment planets, it's also, it's like a servant, they're taking on more, they are suffering more, they're willing to put themselves back for you. So it's those body parts or those functions in our psyche that are taking on more than they should, and those body parts scream louder, they scream quicker, right? Yeah. They let you know, hey, something's wrong here faster, because they have very low tolerance, right? Whereas planets that are dignified have very high tolerance. So a dignified planet can be a major problem that you never notice for a very, very long time.
Those are some excellent distinctions, because again, we can go back to skilled versus unskilled, or how that's operating in a person's life. So even if someone has planets in fall or detriment, people tend to panic, and it's like, your life's not over, don't worry, you can take that vulnerability and turn it into a strength. So for example, I communicate with other astrologers around the world. I help clients in a counseling way as well. Again, not qualified, but to try and help people on their own life path. So using maybe a sore spot in your own chart, which I have done, and used it for the good. And like you said, making that important distinction that dignified planets doesn't necessarily mean a wonderful and fantastic life, and planets in detriment and fall or otherwise afflicted. You've got things like planets going direct, as you say, and separating and applying, to the malefics maybe, or whatever else is going on in that chart. But you make excellent distinctions in that. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yes, because as astrologers, we're looking at mental health for other people. We also need to not be in panic mode all the time
Yeah.
when you see something. It's helpful also. So no, I take your point. In this chart we mentioned the third house emphasis came up very strongly with Jupiter and Pisces, and it so happened this is a police officer who in I think 1952. Here you can see he hijacked a train, hijacked a plane, and hung himself. All these third house triggers of transport. Okay. So what we see here is that the Pisces moon with the Jupiter behind it, again, the mental health signs and the mental health houses allowed me to very quickly pinpoint where the trigger is going to manifest. I'm not talking about Uranus in the 10th house. I'm not talking about Saturn in the 6th house. I don't care about all of that. That's the rational processes. When we come to mental health, the rational process has very little to do with it, actually. So here we can see that the moon in the third house is a very sensitive point here from a mental health point of view. Not only that, I also mentioned in the course that planets that have a very close association by degree to the ascendant in any sign are also mentally sensitive. So here there's a Pluto at 2 degrees and the ascendant is 3 degrees. There's a moon at 3 degrees and the ascendant is also 3 degrees. So from that point of view as well, this moon is not just a 7th house ruler, it's a mentally sensitive, extremely sensitive 7th house ruler. And it's in a sign of Pisces, which is a sensitive sign. And its ruler is also in a sensitive sign. So it's very, very sensitive, this moon. So if there's any place where the mental health is going to play out negatively, it will be in third house matters. So this person is trying to say something, but it's acting up to hijacking trains and vehicles and transport. So that is where I guess the psychology will begin to try to resolve. What are they trying to say? What is this sensitive moon trying to say about their life? Maybe there was a loss of relationship. Wikipedia doesn't give us all the details, but I can see the South Node in the 7th house being brought in through that moon. Maybe there was a loss of another person, something like that, because 7th house is how we connect to others in general. And so maybe they didn't learn how to do that. And so we can talk about the mother relationship. There's so much that we can go into. But just like this, in a few strokes, you can quickly come to the important part. In this case, which is also this is Queen Latifah, popularly known as Queen Latifah. I don't know if you know Queen Latifah, but
is she a singer, I think?
Singer, producer, music as well.
She's in a lot of films, I think, as well. Yeah, fantastic.
Yes, and also actress. Yes, I should actually put their photos. It helps people. So again, I'm not worried about the ascendant ruler and all that and the mixed, questionable reception between Venus and Mars. I'm not bothered about that. Firstly, Scorpio. Well, here's Jupiter, who I know is the ruler of Pisces. So immediately I know that, because Scorpio sensitivity is about forced change and crisis, change management, endings, the typical 8th house kind of themes. But psychologically, it's very sensitive. It's a very psychologically vital sign which holds on to things and in a positive sense can hold on to life, okay, if it's not afflicted. But in any case, I see that the 11th house ruler is sitting here. So I know that immediately Pisces I need to look at, number one. And Pisces also is the 11th house, which is a mentally sensitive house. So doubly so, Pisces comes up as a problem from a mental health point of view. If anything wrong happens in Pisces as a trigger, I'm going to have issues. I see here that the most sensitive, and Jupiter also rules the 8th house, and all these other things are here. But my focus is now immediately coming to here. What I can see here is that, okay, the most sensitive planet here is this Pisces. Coincidentally, I don't even know you had a Pisces Mercury, but that's how it worked out, hey?
Yeah.
So the most sensitive planet here is this combust Pisces Mercury. And this is the 2nd house ruler of the chart.
Now, for you, is that compound by Mercury applying to the sun?
No.
Okay.
For me, the applying aspects don't matter as much as the separating ones for mental health.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought you mentioned before. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because your mental conditioning is something that is already pretty much decided as triggers.
Interesting.
Right? So your birth is an effect of a previous cause of conception. So it goes into a much larger question about psychological development and gestation. But I haven't done all those things in the course. So, but because I've worked with some midwives and things like that, so we can see things that happened in the gestation period. Oh, and then there's a chart that has this aspect that's separating that speaks to that issue. So it's been interesting learning in practice, on the job. So here, this Mercury is the most sensitive planet here, and it is the second house ruler. So how they spend their money, I'm going to really wonder about that. This is nothing to take into account. But what I can see, we start with the moon and Mercury. Mercury we've done, okay? Mercury we have done. Now for what I can see here is that, in the fourth house, and the moon is in the fourth house. That's a strong moon, okay? She's a performer, okay, at heart. And that's strong. There is a square to Saturn, a separating square, important, a separating square to Saturn. So for me, there's a trigger here inbuilt with family, sorrow in the family, it's a responsibility with family that can bear upon, because Saturn is here dominating the moon in the 10th sign from the moon. So that is something that I keep in mind, okay? There's something I keep in mind. So fourth house, hey, and the fourth house ruler is sitting here with the Mercury. So again, I am seeing a confluence coming to this Mercury, and the moon obviously rules the third house. So what happened, so this Jupiter is showing me that, okay, Jupiter ruling the 11th house and the 8th house. Now people think, oh my God, Jupiter is the 11th house ruler, it's fantastic. According to me, that may be good from a worldly point of view, a mundane point of view, but with the sensitive issues in the sign of Pisces and an outer planet in Sagittarius, I know this Jupiter is a trigger for, again, good things gone bad. Good intentions then don't go anywhere. And she's had issues in relationships and sustaining relationships as well in the outside world, because that's what the 7th house is. Now, 11th house, in 1982, her elder brother, a police officer, Lance, died in an off-duty motorcycle accident when he collided with a car while making a turn. She had bought him the motorcycle. So 11th house showing elder siblings. Okay, third house shows younger siblings because they rise after you rise. 11th house has risen before you came. That's where it comes from. Third house in general indicates siblings, okay? And anyway, that is ruled by the moon. So whichever way you want to look at it. But the Pisces issue is very strong. And, even this year, his birthday was 1st of March. He's also actually coincidentally a Pisces.
Oh, wow.
And even this year, March 1st, 2022, she still has put up posts on Instagram, and because she bought him, she wears the key to that motorcycle as a chain around her neck. So she carries that. She
carries, like you said before, the weight of that, and wrongly, maybe, I don't know if she does, maybe blames herself in part, maybe, but having that weight, like you said before, the world on the shoulder, and carrying those symbols of that tragedy, and as you've got on the slide here, the lifelong depression following that particular incident.
Yes, and you can see how, what was the thing that was done? The second house ruler, money. She spent money on him, And this detriment Mercury says, well, maybe you need to think about that. Because what the Pisces Mercury is saying here, I suspect that there was a lot of closeness in her wanting to do good by him and buy him things and spend money on him, things like that, that have happened in her life. And Pisces as a sensitivity is indicating, well, that's crossing a boundary, actually. That's crossing a boundary. And so when it became, I guess, it accumulates, these things build up, and then suddenly it gets cut. And again, because it's a sign of Jupiter, okay, you're not going to, this depression or issue, it has both triggered in the moon sensitivity with Saturn that is latent, which, really also adds to this, to be fair. But also it triggers when she has friends, is she going to think 3 times before she buys a friend an expensive gift? Is she going to think, so it stays with you. That's the Pisces thing. The Pisces thing shows that there's a boundary issue that now you are aware of that is staying with you for the rest of your life.
And in Pisces, it's so hard to put down those boundaries. Mutable water. I mean, where can you put those solid boundaries? You can't really. It's very difficult.
Exactly, because essentially it's a good thing. You see, it's an altruistic thing, and so especially when the good guys hurt us, we really feel it. The bad Saturn, Mars, Pluto. I mean, we know they're gonna do, smash here, bash there, something. We know, we expect it. But when a good guy like Pisces and Jupiter, when these good intentions lead to problems like this, we struggle. And that's the Pisces paradox of you have to respect boundaries. And here is a very strong financial boundary that needs to be honored between your money and siblings.
Wow.
And that is shown by the Mercury. So I did not do anything else in the chart.
Wow. This is such a fascinating delineation and again, eloquently put together and explained. I think this is excellent.
Yeah, so that's basically kind of what it is.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing these examples. And I love, I know this is not part of the class, but you again, proficient in Western and Vedic. So do you combine the complementary systems and get information from both systems?
In general or in this course?
No, not in the course, because I know you'll be just doing the Western side, but when you're either dealing with clients or doing workshops, do you use both? Say someone comes to you for a question, will you use the 2 systems, or will you use one for a particular question or another? How do you do that in your own work? So
you've already answered it. That's exactly how it works. See, this is the Pisces Mercury strong point. You already know the answer. It is that. So it depends on a case-by-case basis. Of course, the Vedic astrology, the psychological mapping is very different in the Vedic corpus. It's got a different system. And so it's about knowing the tools and where to correlate them. So if Vedic astrology also has a lot more detailed questions, a lot more spiritual things as well, already worked out. Multiple layers. I mean, they distinguish between you, your mind, your rational process, your consciousness, your images in the world. It's like very complicated, which satisfies my Virgo peculiarities. And the Western astrology is, to a large extent, a lot more straightforward. It's just there. So it is case-by-case basis, but yes, I do use both of them as and when I need to.
Wonderful. I think that's so fantastic. And obviously I am trained more in the traditional Western sense, but I plan in the next few years to delve into the branches of Vedic astrology, because I think it's important what you're doing is, using complementary systems. There's arguments, or people get caught up in which is the right system or the correct system. But for me, I think everyone should know as much as they can across the world in all these different systems. And, whether you want to use that for particular cases, traditional astrology, we've got perfections and you know, all these different techniques that we've got, progressions. But I definitely plan on the next few years, because I see that as a gap in my knowledge if I don't at least try and learn these other systems to just generate more knowledge and help other people as they go along. Because again, a lot of people get into arguments, house systems. I blend house systems personally, quadrant and whole sign, but you know, people will argue about house systems, they'll argue about traditional, you know, branches of astrology. But for me, I think learn as much as possible as you can to help everybody.
Yes, yeah, you know, we need to get a move on in the world of astrology as the community, like recognize that we have our differences and celebrate them. Instead of, you know, we learn from each other, and we need to acknowledge the sources of that learning so that we can better digest where we are both coming from. And I guess I'm in a sort of unique position because I'm practicing both simultaneously all the time. You know, so mental resources, while stocks last, okay, but it is really that both systems stand alone. They stand very well on their own. And if we study them with the respect that each tradition deserves, we'll really get the benefit maximized from that, from both of them. And it's only our clients that will benefit. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, I think that's a fantastic description of your work and what you do, which is fantastic. So for anybody who'd like to know more about you, do you have a particular website, or do you have social media handles? How can people get a hold of you, or at least look at your work?
Yes, so I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, Speaker Astrology. I'm on YouTube, Speaker Astrology. Our website is speakerastrology.com. And people can email me at info@speakerastrology.com. That's speakerastrology with 1A, .com, and we can discuss things from there.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, again, to reiterate to everybody, this will be a 5-week course on June 18th. We'll put the link in the description below this video, so if anyone wants to register, you can. And I'll also put some pop-up cards that will pop up on this video somewhere, maybe here or there. And to take a look and learn more about the course. And again, thank you, Nathan, so much for joining us today and giving us more in depth into this particular subject. And again, I think a very important subject. And of course, we have ethical considerations of what it might be, but I fully appreciate your work. And again, it's such an important topic that I feel needs to be addressed in astrology.
Yes, and thank you for always leading the way.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, Nathan, again, and have a wonderful evening.
You too. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.